So in part one of this video, I told you about my experience working at Stop and Shop, my 2 weeks of overnight crew that ended pretty disastrously, and I quit. Now, in this video, I'm going to tell you about the following 2 weeks where I worked at ShopRite, or as I prefer to call it, Shop Fight or Flight. As I said, this experience was even worse than my one at Stop and Shop, and they both lasted 2 weeks. So I made it a month total working overnight crew in 2 separate crews. And the second one is the most unhinged, so let's get into it. So I went in for my interview, and it was a lot more extensive than my Stop and Shop one, which was fine. You know, I think I interviewed pretty well, actually. And I did inform them of that I had worked at Stop and Shop, but they didn't seem to mind my short tenure or anything. And I was trying to get a job in the day crew this time, in spite of it, you know, somewhat conflicting with my hours, because I had kind of caught on that night crew is a hyper-masculine environment that, you know, just does not jive with me. But they kept pushing, saying, well, we need someone for overnight crew. Would you be willing to work overnight crew? And I said, you know, okay, I guess I will, because I assumed, well, it'll be better anyways, you know, it's not going to be, people are not going to be as crazy this time, right? So I completed another 5 hours of orientation videos, just bored to death. I didn't have to go through much training as far as stocking goes, because they just figured I know what I'm doing. So I showed up to my first overnight shift, and I could immediately tell that there was an incredibly hostile energy in the air. So I introduced myself to someone who I saw in an aisle, a tall gentleman in his 50s. He's the opposite of gentle, but I assumed he was the night manager, and it turned out that was not the case. So as you'll see, he very much acts like he is the manager. He's incredibly rough around the edges, and I immediately start hearing him scream from inside of his aisle, "What the fuck is this?" Because he's just like enraged that he deems someone to have put it on the shelf incorrectly. He's extremely anal about the shelves. I also do meet the night manager, who's this younger guy, incredibly short. That seems to be a strange pattern with overnight crew people. Together, they bitch about the day crew and the managers and just about everything immediately. And I can tell they just have a generally unhappy demeanor. Now, in spite of it being my first day, they also immediately start freaking out when I ask questions, because sometimes, you know, I don't know where something on the pallet. As I mentioned in my last video, you sort the pallet into different U-boats that correspond with the aisles that, you know, that item goes in. I start asking questions, and I immediately get the vibe that they do not want me to ask questions. They tell me, you got to know this stuff. You better start quizzing yourself on it real quick. I'm like, okay, I will not ask any questions. And then, so, you know, sometimes if I don't know where something goes, I won't do anything, because I'm kind of just like paralyzed. The man I mentioned, who's not a manager, there's only 2 other guys I'm working with. One is a manager and one just does all his dirty work. He immediately, when he sees me not knowing what to do, he says, "Are you just gonna fucking stare at it?" And I'm like, oh my god, I'm really fucking in trouble at this job. And I also get bitched at by the manager himself. They have no patience for anyone who does not know where everything on the pallet goes immediately. They're also best buddies who commiserate about how they hate the world. There's bitching about the government and potholes or whatever. You know, they're just kind of looking for a target. One manager in the store in particular, they really hate. They talk about how he waddles around and has more mouth than brains. So I'm paired up with the non-manager, older guy. They're gonna have me shadow him, and I know that means my night is going to be fucking hellacious. Now, we're stocking baby food in the first aisle, which is these very small and gentle glasses, and he immediately tells me to pick up the pace, because he doesn't want me to, you know, I'm trying to be gentle with these because they're tiny in glass, but he's already just like, he's getting pissed off. The night has just begun. Now, I was told at my previous job there's a few different tips that I received that very much did not apply to this job. One of them was that if I have an extra box, it's fine to put it in horizontally. And of course, this man notices that I had done this because he likes to go back and check my work. And he's like, who the fuck puts a box in horizontally? I'm like, me, I guess. And I was also told that if you have 1 or 2 items left in a package, that you should never leave that there. You can't have 1 or 2 things that are overstock if that's all there is. So you have to put it behind, if it doesn't fit, you have to put it behind another similar item. And he also caught me doing this, and he said, we never do that. That's ridiculous. He's just on my ass from the jump of my first shift. The only saving grace is he's usually too angry about how the day people had stocked something. His op is essentially the day people, that he spends a lot of his rage on them and doesn't have time to direct as much of it at me. So I get through this first shift and we get to the point where we're blocking. As I mentioned in the last video, that's where you rotate cans so that they're facing forward and you make sure everything on the shelf is 2 up. There's not stuff pinned to the back of the shelf. This is essentially, it's just busy work, you know, it's just to make the store look very neat and presentable. And of course, he does not feel that I'm doing this quickly enough. Immediately tells me, don't look at it, just block it. I don't want you looking at any of this, I want you blocking it. And I'm just standing there like nodding my head. He's like, what are you doing? You're just standing there right now. Block, block, block. He's essentially treating this like it's a life or death matter. He thinks he works in, I don't know, an emergency room or something. I'm trying not to have a panic attack. I'm just trying to breathe here. And I have to continue to block and move down each aisle with him, moving as fast as humanly possible, and hoping he doesn't notice if I missed anything. I also made the mistake of thinking I could go to the bathroom, and after coming back, I decided to meet up with the manager in his aisle to try to block with him instead. And of course, this other guy came and found me. He started saying that I disappeared, and he's, you know, trying to like snitch on me to the manager for going pee for literally 2 minutes. It's literally how long I was gone. Now, the good thing was that in my second shift, I was no longer paired up with this man. Now, that was a relief to me, certainly. So aside from them raging at me when we unloaded the pallet, and this manager being a younger guy, he did allow you to wear earbuds, which, as I mentioned in my Stop and Shop video, I was not allowed to do. So I started to think, you know, in spite of this being a very rage-filled environment, maybe I could actually survive here, just, you know, have to blend in enough while they're unloading the pallet, and that's the only time I really have to see them. And through just this strategy, and usually they were caught up in their own drama and they kind of would just ignore me, so I was able to actually last until my 5th shift. And this is a night where, you know, the other nights were actually surprisingly pretty unremarkable. This is the night where everything absolutely collapses. Now, there was a huge pallet on this night, or, you know, a number of them, and it was a situation where we were going to be stocking pretty much the whole shift. We weren't going to have any time to actually block. One side note, one day I did lose my little, I had a little piece of paper where I had down written a code you have to punch in when you take your break. Of course, this man, the non-manager, older guy, notices me not punch in to take my break, and that does make him lose his shit, because he's extremely protective of the company, and I have to explain to him that I just lost, you know, my Post-it note, and I just didn't commit my number to memory. It's only my second shift, and the idea that I'm going to do 30 minutes of time theft is, of course, infuriating to him. Thankfully, I did end up finding my Post-it note, so it was resolved after that, and nobody else even bothered to say anything as far as the actual store managers go, or the night crew manager. So I don't know, that ended up being fine. Now, on this night with this massive pallet, I completed 4 aisles, I believe, the last of which was the juice aisle, which there's a lot of very heavy stuff, giant jugs of water and juice, and there was an absolute massive amount of it. So I'm just trying to power through the pain and get this done. It turns out I can get it done just before it's time for me to leave, and I actually end up taking 10 extra minutes before clocking out. And at Stop and Shop, you were not allowed to clock out a single minute late or they would freak out. But there didn't seem to be as strict of rules as far as that went at this place. What happened as to why I took an extra 10 minutes, I have a U-boat of cardboard, and I had so many boxes on it that it spilled over, so I had to go get another U-boat, put half the cardboard on that, and just clean up the aisle. Also, a strange thing was going on this night. There was a robot going around the store, and it seemed to sit in my aisle the entire night staring at me. Earlier, when we were unloading the pallet, the manager, he really has a thing about this robot. I think its name was Tully or something along those lines. I don't know if you work at ShopRite, maybe you know what they call their robot, but the manager just started screaming, "Go fuck yourself, Tully! Get the fuck out of here, Tully!" Like, okay, he's got, it's a thing with him about this robot. So the robot was watching me as I spilled the cardboard and cleaned it up, and I'm thinking they definitely have cameras in this thing. I'm probably gonna get fired because this just looks like such a mess. So I clock out 10 minutes after the shift has ended, and I think nothing of it. I think I'm just gonna go home. What happens then is the most unhinged thing I could have ever imagined. The older guy, who I will reiterate here, is not a manager. He comes out he chases me out of the store in an absolute rage, and he starts like, "Did you collect the overstock off the floor?" And I tell him I didn't, and the thing about this is I had only done it once before because the manager just happened to ask me to do so. And I didn't know that this was something that was my responsibility. Also, I'm already 10 minutes over, and I'm thinking you get in trouble for staying late, because that's just how it was at the last job. And I tell him no, and he says, "You don't leave this store without getting permission from our night manager." And I'm just like, holy fucking shit. Like, this is an incredible spectacle. There's people who work there in the morning that are coming in. They're stopping to watch because this man is having an absolute meltdown. And I get the feeling it's just begun. And I tell him, I'm sorry, at my last job, we weren't allowed. I'm just like frantically trying to make up an excuse. I tell him at my last job, we weren't allowed to stay late. So he's like, "You don't leave this store till the job is done." Again, this is not something I knew was supposed to be a part of my job every time. Like, it was something that I was assigned to that had never been made clear to me. And he screams, "Now I'm the one who has to fucking stay!" And then he proceeds to slam. There's an automatic door that you walk out of, but it's not automatic yet because it hasn't been turned on at this time in the morning. He proceeds to grab it and slam it full force, making a face like he's an absolute fucking dementor. Like, and then he starts banging on the glass like a fucking prisoner trapped inside of a cell or something. And now, as I mentioned, this is not a job where I'm incredibly like committed to or in a position where I need it incredibly badly. So of course, my immediate reaction is I have to go back and work with this man again after he is beyond furious at me. Now, I also didn't know these two men have a very strong connection to each other, and I didn't know that you need to get the night manager's permission before you leave. Again, it was not a thing at my last job. And I had noticed this just in the 5 shifts I work, they take everything as a slight against the other. They're incredibly sensitive when it comes to each other, and anything you say, like even if you're just asking one of them a question, the other one will like get on your ass and start like freaking out. But of course, I'm thinking at this point, there's no humanly possible way that I can go back and confront this man in the next shift. Now, of course, I still live with my parents. I am a bum in that way, in spite of being 26. And I do go home and tell them what happened because I thought this man was going to knock my head off, honestly. Of course, they're Gen X, and they tell me I have to be a man and go back and confront him next time, or they want me to try to fight him, or which is just not going to happen. It's not my makeup. I'm a Zoomer. I've never fought anyone in my life, and I've also already quit one job. So what my parents are thinking is that I must be the problem, and I've described to you what's happened at each of these jobs, so I mean, you can be the judge of that. Maybe you do think I'm the problem. What I end up doing, I had started wearing knee pads in my second to last shift just because my knees were just starting to really hurt. So I bought some. I slip a resignation letter. This felt like the movie Escape from Alcatraz with Clint Eastwood, which I would recommend. It's a very well done movie. But I slip my resignation letter inside of my knee pad so my parents don't know I'm leaving with it. I make sure I get there nice and early so there's no chance of me running into either of these two psychotic men. I go into the bathroom, take off my knee pad where I have my resignation letter. I put it back on, walk up to the service desk where no one's sitting there at night, drop off my letter, and walk right back out of the store. And what I told my parents is that I was fired. They told me not to come back in because they were pissed off at me with whatever mistakes I'd made. Now, it wasn't that I wanted to lie. I desperately had to get out of this job. The tension was just escalating. It had been there in my first shift, and it had sort of simmered down. Then it just had risen back up all at once with this man raging at me. And there was also another incident with the manager, I forgot, where he accused me of stealing his step stool. Just had a pile of step stools. We use crates in this job. He just had a pile of crates sitting there. I assumed it was for all of us, but I guess he uses a bunch of different crates for different reasons. He came into my aisle pretty mad, and this was also in the last shift, that about me taking one of his crates. But I could just feel that the level of tension, they had not liked me from the moment I had started working there. And I could sense that if I went back, the level of tension that was going to be there was going to be enormous, because this man was going to go tell his best friend, the manager, that I had left, and I guess the manager might have been the one who sent him out there because I hadn't done the overstock. They were just like in a terrible mood on this night and were ready to absolutely crucify me for leaving only 10 minutes after my shift ended. I guess they wanted me to stay, I don't know, 30 minutes or an hour, or who knows how long. So that puts an end to my overnight stocking experience. It's not a job that I disliked, just fundamentally, like putting stuff on the shelves and all of it is pretty enjoyable and can be pretty calming if you're able to listen to earbuds, as that was the plus side of my the second overnight stocking job I worked. The thing about it is you have to be very careful with your coworkers. They are very rambunctious, very intense people who work in this kind of a job. And if you're watching these videos, if you happen to stumble upon this because you're thinking about joining night crew, you have to be aware of that. If it's not your temperament, if you're someone who's shy and quiet like me, it can go very poorly for you. I was ganged up upon in both of these jobs. I feel like Drew Monson in that video he made a long time ago called "I Was Threatened." Not to be caught up in my own sort of victim narrative here or whatever, but it's just someone like me, just they sniff it out when you're quiet and vulnerable. Like I said, they're very masculine. They're like sharks in the water, and they will figure out that you're weak just emotionally. And they will come after you. And I thought I could last. I had gotten to a point where I thought, in spite of the very hot temperament at the second job, that I had figured out stocking enough and that I was going to be able to last there just by keeping to myself. It blew up in my face all of a sudden in that fifth and final shift I worked there. It was inevitable. That's the thing. This was going to happen no matter what. It was just a matter of time. But yeah, I'm going to go back to waiting tables. That has its downsides as well, but it's a lot better than overnight stocking, I can tell you that much. So yeah, or at least it's just a better fit for me. But I hope you enjoyed this story. It ended up being very long. Go back and watch the first part if you happen to enjoy this and you haven't seen that yet. Peace out. I'm going to have something special coming to my channel soon as well. I have another video planned, so watch out.